Hi, my name is Ben and I'm a Senior Data Engineer at Quintessence. Today we're going to be walking through how to build a top 10 weights report using the Quintessence application. So the top 10 report we're going to be creating is going to look a little bit like this. We're going to have a portfolio as an input, we're going to have a date as an input, and we're going to have a block of data showing the top 10 most influential instruments inside our portfolio for that date. I'm also going to add a header of the portfolio and a header of the date at the top, so that things look nice and the table is nice and dynamic. This is what the report's going to look like. Let's go to Quintessence and let's build the report on the back end. So the first thing we need for any sort of report is the data that we're going to be surfacing inside that report. So the entity browser is a great place to find that data. I'm going to type in ABC123. That's the name of my portfolio or the portfolio code, and I'm going to be using weight. So if I type in weight, I see weight is there and I see some data below. And this is the exact data that I want to use. You could also use holding and close price data or market value if you wanted to, but we're going to use weight because it's quite easy. At the top, there's a copy function button, and I'm going to click copy function, and that just copies the Excel function, which is sort of the easiest one to deal with. If I go to start menu, we're going to create a report now. So I go to reports, create a new report, and remember, I've got the data in my clipboard in the function. I just need to create the report sort of skeleton first. I'm going to call this the top 10 weights report, and we can make a description saying report to return top 10 most influential instruments in a portfolio on a date. So I need to have two parameters. One is going to be the portfolio, and that's going to be text, and the other one is going to be a date, and that's not going to be text, that's going to be actually date format. We don't want to be able to send in non-dates. So we can go to the configuration and we see we have our test variables on the left, we have our equation on the right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to surface our data. So I'm going to paste in that function that I got from the entity browser. If I click execute, I'll see my data's there already. That's great. But I don't want this hard-coded to portfolio ABC123. I want this to be any portfolio that I type in. So I'm going to say portfolio there. And the same actually applies for the date. I'm going to say date, comma date for my start and end date in this function. Now I can type in a date now. I can, say March 1st, 2015, and it's ABC123. When I click execute, I get back that exact data. And I can also notice, hey, I don't actually want to see my portfolio in column 1. I don't want to see the dates in column 3 and 4. I can just remove those because those aren't important. So I'm going to remove parent from the data view, and I'm going to remove the dates from the data view of this function as well. And now when I click execute, this is the exact data that I want. So I'm going to comment this data and say call the raw data. And now I can continue making my report. So the next thing I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to sort the data in order to know which are more influential than the others. And so I'm going to say sort the data, and we're going to call this variable sort, and we're going to use the sort data function. All right. And the sort data function takes two parameters, the data you want to sort and then the sort order. So we're going to be going descending on column 2 because we want the highest weight at the top. So I'm going to say -2 and close off that line. And if I hit execute, I'll see I've got my most influential instruments at the top with IBC051. And at the bottom, we've got less influential instruments. So this is great. Once I've sorted it, I just need to select the top 10 lines. And what we can do there is use the top function. So top 10 lines, we're going to call this top 10, and the top function also takes two parameters. It takes the data and then the amount of lines that you want. So here I've got top, sort, top 10, right. Click execute and we see we've just got those top 10 lines. So this is great. This is the data we want in our report, in the table that this report generates. And the next thing we could do is we can just generate the headers, right. So I'm going to say generate headers, and we're going to call this parameter headers. And I'm going to use the span function to span two arrays next to each other, which are going to be my headers. So to span things next to each other, we use the star, and we're going to say array 1 next to array 2. The first array is going to be our portfolio, that was our input, and the next array is going to be the date. But I want the date to be in a specific format so that no matter what format someone sends it in, I still see this format of the date in my report. I'm going to say the text function lets me format the date. I'm going to say dd-mmm-yyyyy. Close that bracket, close off the span, end the line. If I click execute, I'll see there are my headers as I want them. Now I can say span the headers to get a result, and that's my final step. I want the result to be the headers on top of my data. So I can use a span function again. This time I'm going to span two things over one another using the /, and we're going to have the headers first, and then we're going to have the top 10 thereafter. So if I click execute, there we go. I see all my data as I want it. And I can save this report now, and we can remember it needs to be called top 10 weights, and we can go back to Excel, and I'm going to open a new blank workbook, and we're going to have portfolio, we're going to have date. So our portfolio, we're going to test with ABC123 and 1st of March 2015. And then we need to actually call our report. So we're going to use the report function. We're going to type in top 10 weights, and the headers argument we're not going to put in. And argument 1 is going to be our portfolio, ABC123. Argument 2 is going to be our date, which is the 1st of March 2015. Close my brackets, press enter, and there is my data. And now we can do a little bit of formatting. I can select the whole sheet and make it gray perhaps. And I can select my tables and give them nice borders. Maybe I can give this a bottom border as well, just to make this look a bit cleaner. Make some things bold. And make my data all white. And there we go. Maybe I also want to make this particular column a % sign with 2 decimal places. And I've got a top 10 report. I can also make these green, just have them stand out a little bit. And this is a top 10 report. And what's great about this as well is that I can change this date to another date. Let's say I want to look at April 1st, and my data updates automatically. My headers update. I see the top 10 for this particular day. And we could even build this further and make the date so that it is always the last month end. That way, whenever you open the sheet shows you the last month and top 10 instruments inside this portfolio. But that's all I have for you today. I hope that you really enjoyed this, and I hope that this is useful for you.